The stars outside the ship window looked calm, like tiny lights floating in endless black water. But inside the patrol ship Sentinel-12, the crew was tense. They had been flying near the edge of known space for weeks. This area was quiet, with no colonies and no alien traffic. Nothing important ever happened out here. That was exactly why the crew felt strange. Sometimes, when things were too quiet, something big was about to happen. Lynn sat at the radar station, sipping cold coffee from a silver mug. Her job was to watch for any movement, rocks, ships, anything. She had been doing this for hours with no alerts. Her eyes felt heavy, and her mind started to drift. But then a beep echoed through the control room. A red light flashed on her screen. Her fingers froze around the mug. She leaned in and stared at the radar. A large object had just entered the scanner's range. At first, she thought it was a mistake, maybe a drifting asteroid or a glitch in the system. But the shape was too smooth, too perfect. It moved like a ship, but it was huge, much bigger than any human or alien ship registered in their database. "Captain," Lynn called out. Captain Daxon, a tall man with a tired face and sharp eyes, stepped quickly into the room. He had been resting in his quarters but came fast when he heard the alarm. "What is it?" he asked. Lynn pointed at the screen. "Something just appeared on radar. It's not in our records. It's not sending any ID signal." Daxon narrowed his eyes. He stepped closer and looked at the screen himself. The ship was about 20 kilometers away, slowly moving toward them. But what caught his attention was the size. It was massive, at least 5 times larger than Sentinel-12. "Zoom in," he said. Lynn adjusted the controls. The blurry image on the screen became clearer. The ship's body was dark gray, with sharp angles and heavy armor. There were weapon ports all over its surface, huge cannons, missile bays, and strange-looking devices no one could recognize. Daxon frowned. "That's a warship, but I've never seen one like that." Lynn nodded. "It's not in any human or alien database. And look, there's something else." She pointed at a symbol on the side of the ship. It was faded, but still visible. A circle with 3 stars inside it. Daxon's face changed. That symbol was old. It belonged to the Earth Federation, but not the current one. It was from over 100 years ago, used during the Old War. "That can't be right," he said softly. "That design hasn't been used in over a century." Lynn looked at him. "Then how is this ship here now? And why is it heading straight toward us?" Daxon didn't answer. He turned to the communication officer. "Send a message to Central Command. Let them know what we found." The officer nodded and started typing, but after a few seconds, his face turned pale. "Sir, we can't send the message. Communications are down. It's like something's jamming us." Daxon clenched his fists. "They're blocking us. That ship doesn't want us calling for help." Lynn stared at the radar again. "It's coming closer. 17 kilometers now." "Can we run?" someone asked. Daxon shook his head. "No. They're bigger, faster, and heavily armed. If we turn our back, we'll be destroyed. Should we prepare for battle?" Daxon looked around at his small crew. Sentinel-12 was a scout ship, not built for fighting. They had some weapons, but nothing compared to the warship outside. "No," he said. "We try to talk first. Maybe they're human. Maybe they just got lost." "Lost with a ship that size," Lynn said quietly. Daxon didn't answer. He just stared at the screen. Another beep filled the room. A message had been received, but it wasn't coming through normal channels. It was a direct signal sent to them from the warship. Lynn opened it. One word appeared on her screen. Just one. "Return." Everyone in the room went silent. Lynn frowned. "That's it? Just return." Daxon leaned in. "Check the language data. That word isn't in modern code." Lynn typed quickly. "It's an old Earth language. The kind used during the Old War, about 150 years ago." The crew looked at each other. The pieces didn't fit. A ship that didn't exist in any records. A symbol from a war that ended long ago. A message in a language no one had used in generations. Daxon took a deep breath. They're trying to tell us something. Or maybe they're testing us. Another signal came through. This time, it was a live video feed. Lynn opened it on the main screen. The image was grainy. A man stood in the center of the frame. He wore a dark gray uniform with old Earth military symbols. His face was pale, with deep eyes and a strong jaw. He looked young, maybe 30, but his uniform and background looked like something from a history book. He didn't speak. He only stared. Then the video cut off. Lynn whispered, "That uniform hasn't been worn since the last days of the old war." "Check the feed origin," Daxon said. It came from inside the warship, direct from their bridge. "Any way to scan inside the ship?" "No. It's shielded. We can't see anything else." Daxon looked at the screen again. "That man, if he's real, he shouldn't be alive. Not unless." "Time travel?" Lynn asked. Daxon shook his head. "That's impossible. But something strange is happening. This ship might have been lost for a long time." 13 kilometers now," someone called out. The warship was still getting closer. Daxon made a decision. "Prepare a shuttle. I'm going in." Lynn's eyes widened. "What? Alone?" "No. You're coming with me. You're the best at reading old systems. If something goes wrong, I'll need your help." "Sir, that's too dangerous," another officer said. "I know. But if we don't go, they might see us as a threat. I want answers. And this might be our only chance to get them." Lynn stood up. "I'll go. But we take weapons, just in case." They left the bridge and headed to the shuttle bay. The small transport ship was ready in minutes. As they flew out of Sentinel-12, the massive warship loomed ahead like a sleeping beast. It didn't move. It didn't fire. It just waited. A small hangar door opened slowly on the side of the giant ship. Daxon flew the shuttle inside. The hangar was dark. Lights flickered on the floor as they landed. Dust floated in the air. The ship was quiet, too quiet. They stepped out with flashlights and scanned the area. Old cargo boxes, broken tools, and rusty machines lined the walls. The air smelled stale. "This place hasn't been touched in years," Lynn said. Daxon nodded. "Feels like a grave." Suddenly, a light turned on above them. A door opened at the far end of the hangar. A man stepped out. He was the same man from the video. Same face, same uniform. He looked at them and spoke in the old Earth language. Lynn activated her translator. The voice came through clearly. "You are late," the man said. Daxon stepped forward. "Who are you?" The man's eyes narrowed. "We are the shield. We are the sword. We were built to fight the war. And now, the war continues." Daxon shook his head. "The war ended a long time ago." The man didn't blink. "Not for us. We were lost in the dark. Time changed for you, but not for us." "What do you mean?" The man pointed up. "This ship, Vanguard, was thrown into a wormhole. We came back through it only 5 years ago. But for you, it's been much longer." Daxon looked at Lynn. Her face showed disbelief. The man continued. "We came back to finish the war. Where is the enemy? Where are the traitors?" Daxon stepped forward. "There are no enemies now. Earth is united. The war is over." The man didn't move. "Then prove it." Behind him, the hallway lights turned red. Warning lights flashed. Somewhere deep inside the warship, systems powered up. Daxon knew what that meant. Vanguard was getting ready. If they didn't act fast, this old warship, armed and powerful, could destroy everything in its path. And it believed the war was still going. Daxon stared at the man standing in front of them. The silence inside the giant warship was heavy, almost like the air itself didn't want to move. Lynn kept her flashlight pointed ahead, watching the man closely. He didn't seem afraid. He didn't seem curious either. He looked like a soldier who had followed orders for too long, and now didn't know what peace even looked like. "My name is Captain Daxon. This is Officer Lin. We're from the ship Sentinel-12. We come in peace," Daxon said calmly. The man tilted his head slightly. His eyes were cold and focused. "Peace is not real," he said. "It's only a break between battles. And we don't have time for breaks." Lin looked around the massive hangar again. "Are there others on board? Is your crew alive?" The man turned slowly. "Follow me." He walked down the long corridor, boots echoing against the metal floor. Daxon and Lin looked at each other, then followed. The walls around them were old. Some places had wires sticking out and screens with static, but the lights were working now, guiding them deeper inside. The strange thing was how clean it was, not perfect, but not destroyed either, like someone had been taking care of it, just enough to keep it alive. After a few minutes, they reached a large door. The man placed his hand on a panel, and the door opened with a heady hiss. Inside was the bridge of the ship, dozens of chairs, control panels, monitors showing maps, weapon systems, and energy levels. And sitting at these stations were people, humans, men and women in the same old uniforms. Some looked young, some older. They turned their heads as Daxon and Lin entered. Most of them stared in silence, unsure what to do. Only one man stood up. He was taller than the first, maybe in his 40s. His uniform had more medals. His face was scared, and his expression serious. The first man saluted him. "Commander Harlan, we have visitors." Commander Harlan looked at Daxon and Lin. "New Earth?" he asked. Daxon nodded. "Yes, we're from the Earth Federation, year 2473. Harlan's face didn't move. "Our last recorded time was 2323. That makes 150 years. Lin whispered, "So it's true." Harlan walked toward them. "We were in a deep space battle during the war. Our mission was to strike the enemy's command center. But as we jumped through hyperspace, something went wrong. A wormhole pulled us in. When we came out, everything was different. No signals, no allies, no enemies." "You've been alone all this time?" Daxon asked. "Yes," Harlan replied. "We thought Earth was destroyed. We believed we were the last." Lin stepped forward. "Earth survived. The war ended decades ago. The enemies were defeated. Peace was made." Some of the crew behind Harlan whispered to each other. Others looked confused. Harlan didn't speak for a moment. Then he said, "We heard no such news. We stayed alive. We repaired the ship. We trained. We were ready to return to the fight. And now, you say it's over." "It's over," Daxon repeated. "The war is history now. Most people on Earth don't even remember it." Harlan's eyes narrowed. "I don't trust you. You could be the enemy in disguise." Lin shook her head. "You're using an old communication code. You sent the word return. Why?" Harlan pointed to the ceiling. "It was programmed into our system. If we ever returned to known space, the message would be sent to Earth Command. But Earth Command doesn't exist anymore," Lin said softly. Suddenly, alarms echoed through the bridge. Red lights flashed. A young officer looked at the screen in front of him. "Commander, we've detected multiple ships approaching. New Earth vessels." Harlan turned to Daxon. "You called for backup." Daxon raised his hands. "No. We tried to send a message earlier, but your ship jammed us. They must have seen your energy signal. They're coming to check what's going on." Another officer shouted, "They're arming weapons." "No," Daxon said quickly. "That's standard protocol when approaching an unknown threat. They don't know who you are. They're just being careful." But Harlan wasn't listening. His face hardened. "Prepare weapons. Raise shields. This is what we were trained for." Lin stepped in front of him. "You're going to start a war that doesn't need to happen. Please listen. We're not your enemy. Those ships are human. Your people. They are not my people, Harlan growled. My people are dead. My Earth is gone. These are strangers flying enemy ships. Daxon looked around the bridge. Many of the crew looked unsure now. Their hands hovered over controls, but their eyes didn't show full trust in Harlan's orders. They were scared, confused. Some wanted to believe the war had ended. Daxon took a deep breath. Let me talk to my ship. Let me talk to the other vessels. I can prove to you that we are not your enemies. Harlan didn't answer. Lynn said, if you fire on those ships, you'll be killing humans. Earth survivors. Maybe even descendants of people you knew. The room went silent. Then, the officer at the comm station spoke up. Sir, I'm getting a signal. A voice message. From Earth Archives. Harlan looked at him. Play it. The old warship Vanguard drifted silently in space, surrounded by modern human ships. None of them made a move. No one fired. Inside the Vanguard, the air was tense, but calm. Commander Harlan had stood down his crew, and Captain Daxon and Officer Lynn had delivered their message. The war was over. Earth was still alive. Even so, trust wasn't fully built yet. The crew of the Vanguard had lived for over a century in isolation. They had trained every day for war, with no idea that time had passed differently for the rest of the universe. The enemy they once fought no longer existed, but their minds were still stuck in the past. Inside the control room, Daxon stood next to Lynn as she checked the ship's data systems. They had been allowed to access non-military parts of the ship under supervision. The Vanguard's computers were old but powerful, and they held secrets, maybe even things Earth had forgotten. I can't believe how much is stored here, Lynn whispered as she worked. Old battle records, maps, even classified mission logs from the old war. Most of this was lost to time. Daxon nodded. This ship is like a flying time capsule. Commander Harlan stood nearby, arms crossed, watching them closely. He didn't speak much, but his eyes said everything. He still didn't fully trust Daxon, but he was starting to question his own beliefs too. Suddenly, one of the young officers spoke. Commander, we're receiving a signal. From the Sentinel-12. Put it through, Harlan said. The screen lit up, and a familiar face appeared. First Officer Brennan from Daxon's ship. Captain, Command just sent word. They want to debrief you and meet the Vanguard face to face. They're sending a neutral envoy ship with diplomats. Daxon nodded. Understood. Tell them we'll be ready. Harlan turned away from the screen. If this is a trick. Daxon raised his hand. It's not. Earth wants to help you. You've been through something no one else has. You're not enemies. You're heroes who were lost. Harlan didn't answer, but he gave a small nod. Hours passed. The envoy ship arrived, sleek, white, and clearly not a war vessel. It docked carefully at the side of the Vanguard. From inside, 3 diplomats entered the hangar, 2 men and a woman, dressed in dark blue suits with the Earth Federation symbol on their shoulders. They were calm, respectful, and serious. Daxon and Lynn watched as they greeted Harlan. The first diplomat, an older man named Teller, stepped forward and offered his hand. Commander Harlan, on behalf of the Earth Federation, welcome home. Harlan looked at the hand, then slowly shook it. We don't know what home means anymore. Teller smiled slightly. We'll help you remember. For the next 2 days, talks continued. The diplomats listened. Harlan and his officers explained everything. How they were pulled into a wormhole, how they survived, how they believed the war had never ended. In return, the diplomats explained what the galaxy had become. They showed videos of Earth, of peace, of families living without fear. Some of the Vanguard's crew cried when they saw Earth's blue oceans and green forests. Others sat quietly, trying to understand this new world. But not everyone was happy. Deep inside the Vanguard, a small group of soldiers met in secret. Their leader was Lieutenant Rourke, a hard-faced man who had never liked change. He had been a strong believer in the war effort, and now he felt betrayed. "They want us to surrender," Rourke whispered. "They want us to forget our mission, forget our fallen." "I won't do it." One of the younger soldiers frowned. "But sir, the war is over. Earth survived." "Earth change," Rourke said. "This new Earth is soft, weak. We are the last real soldiers. If we give in now, everything we fought for is gone." Another soldier asked, "What do you want to do?" Rourke looked around. "We still control the ship's main systems. Commander Harlan is distracted. If we retake the bridge, we can finish what we started. The Vanguard can remind Earth who we are." Silence followed. Then two of them nodded. That night, Rourke made his move. He and 5 loyal soldiers made their way toward the bridge. They avoided cameras, used old backdoor passages, and wore full armor. Lynn, still working in the data room, caught a strange signal on her screen. "Daxon," she whispered, "something's wrong. Look at this. Power is being rerouted to the lower weapon decks." Daxon's eyes widened. Why would they need weapons now? Lynn stood up fast. "We need to warn Commander Harlan." They ran through the hallway. But before they reached the bridge, the alarms sounded. Red lights flashed. An emergency lockdown began. Inside the bridge, Harlan stood up as the doors slammed shut. "What's happening?" A voice crackled through the speaker. It was Rourke. "Commander, you failed your duty. This ship wasn't built for peace. It was built to destroy the enemy. And if Earth has become the enemy, then so be it." Harlan shouted, "Stand down, Rourke." "That's an order." But Rourke didn't respond. Outside the ship, the modern Earth vessels noticed the energy spike. The Vanguard was powering its weapons. On board, Daxon and Lynn fought their way through sealed doors. With help from loyal crew members, they reached the security hub. Lynn hacked into the system and opened a path to the bridge. Harlan was trapped inside with 3 officers. The lights flickered as the ship's main guns came online. Rourke's voice returned. "The Vanguard will fire. You have 60 seconds to choose. Join us, or be forgotten." Daxon arrived at the bridge door and shouted, "Harlan, we can break the override, but we need your access code." Harlan's voice came through the small speaker near the door. "I'm sending it now." Lynn typed quickly. Sparks flew as wires were cut and reconnected. Finally, the door opened. Daxon and Lynn rushed inside. Harlan was sweating, holding his side. He'd been hurt in the lockdown, but he was still standing. "They're trying to take the ship," he said. "If they fire, Earth will fire back. This ends in blood." "Not if we shut it down first," Lynn said. They ran to the control panel. Rourke had changed the codes, but not all of them. Lynn accessed a backdoor system, the one used for emergency shutdowns during the old war. 30 seconds, Daxon said. "I know," Lynn replied. Her fingers moved fast, her eyes focused. Outside, the Vanguard's weapons aimed at the closest Earth ship. Inside that ship, the captain gave a quiet order. "Shields up. Prepare counterstrike." On the Vanguard, Lynn found the command she needed. "I've got it." She hit the key. All across the Vanguard, lights shut down. Weapons powered off. Engines stopped humming. The great warship fell silent. In the weapons room, Rourke stared at a dead screen. What did she do? The doors burst open. Loyal soldiers surrounded him. "Stand down," one of them shouted. Rourke didn't fight. He knew it was over. Back on the bridge, Harlan sat down, breathing heavily. "You saved us all," he told Daxon and Lynn. Lynn nodded. "It wasn't just us. Your crew made the right choice." Outside, the envoy ship sent a message. "Stand down confirmed. No damage. All ships safe." The crisis had passed, but everyone knew that peace still had a long road ahead. The silence in the Vanguard was unsettling. For the first time in over a century, the warship was no longer on high alert. The ship's engines hummed softly in the background, and the lights had returned to their usual steady glow. Outside, the stars continued to pass by. But inside the bridge, Commander Harlan stood by the large window, staring out into the vast emptiness of space. The crisis had passed. The weapons were powered down. Rourke and his group had been detained, and most of the crew had come to terms with the fact that they had been living in a war that no longer existed. Yet, a heavy feeling still lingered in the air, like a storm that hadn't fully cleared. "Do you think they'll ever forgive us?" Harlan asked quietly, not looking at Daxon or Lynn, who stood behind him. Lynn stepped forward. "It's not about forgiveness. It's about moving forward. You've survived more than most could imagine. You don't have to prove yourself anymore." Harlan didn't reply. He continued to look at the stars. "Commander," Daxon said, "you'll need to make a decision. Earth Command is offering to help you rebuild the Vanguard. They'll bring specialists, engineers, everything you need. They want to give you a place in the new Federation." Harlan sighed. "And if we don't accept, what happens to us?" Daxon paused before speaking. "You become a part of Earth's history. A relic. A group of soldiers who fought a war that no longer exists." There was a long silence. Lynn added, "But if you accept, you can start fresh. You've been isolated from Earth for so long. Now you have a chance to be a part of it. You have a chance to rebuild your future." Harlan turned slowly to face them. "What would that future look like?" "Peace," Daxon said simply. "You've seen it on Earth. It's not perfect, but it's better than living in constant battle." Harlan nodded slowly, as if weighing the options in his mind. He walked over to his command chair and sat down heavily, the weight of the decision on his shoulders. The crew had been soldiers for so long. The thought of peace felt foreign to them, almost like a dream. "I never thought I'd see the day when we'd have to choose peace," Harlan murmured, almost to himself. Lynn sat beside him. "Maybe it's time to give it a chance." As the hours passed, talks continued between the Vanguard and the Earth Federation. The envoy ship, still docked alongside, was filled with diplomats and technical specialists, ready to assist the Vanguard's crew. But the road ahead wouldn't be easy. The Vanguard's crew had to adjust to this new world, a world of peace, of rebuilding. Many of them had been born into war, and now they had to learn how to live without it. Daxon and Lynn had their own role to play in this transition. As representatives of the Earth Federation, they worked to ensure the safety of the Vanguard's crew and to help them adapt to life in the galaxy after so many years in isolation. As the days went by, Harlan and his officers began to see the truth in what Daxon and Lynn had said. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were survivors. And now, they had a chance to be part of something greater. But it wasn't without challenges. The crew had to be trained in new technologies. They had to be taught how to live in peace. Many struggled with the idea of letting go of their old ways, ways that had defined them for so long. One day, after a long training session, Harlan and Daxon sat together in the Vanguard's mess hall. The place was quiet, with only a few crew members eating their meals. They sat at a table, talking in hushed voices. "I didn't think it would be this hard," Harlan admitted, looking down at his plate. "I thought once the war was over, things would be simpler. But it feels like we're losing a part of ourselves." Daxon looked across the table at him. "I get it. You've spent your whole life preparing for one thing. And now, that thing is gone. But peace isn't something you just step into. It's something you have to learn." Harlan nodded slowly, but there was still doubt in his eyes. "I want to believe you. I want to believe that Earth can show us a better way." "You have to trust them," Daxon said. "And trust yourself. You've survived a lot already. Now it's about finding a new purpose." The days turned into weeks, and slowly the Vanguard's crew began to adjust. They participated in training sessions. They learned about the new weapons systems, the peacekeeping missions that the Earth Federation ran. They studied the history of Earth's recovery after the war, learning about the struggles and the triumphs. One morning, as the Vanguard hovered near a new Earth colony, Harlan called Daxon and Lynn to the bridge. The Vanguard had received new orders. Earth was ready to give them a place in the Federation, but it wasn't going to be easy. "Captain, Officer Lynn," Harlan said, his voice steady, but with a hint of nervousness. "We've been given a mission. It's not a war mission, but it's important. Earth Command wants us to assist with peace negotiations on a border planet that's been in conflict for years. They think we're the right team for the job." Daxon raised an eyebrow. "Peace negotiations. You're sure you're ready for that?" Harlan smiled, though it was a small one. "I think we're ready. We've fought for so long. Now it's time to fight for something different." Lynn nodded. "That's the spirit." The Vanguard slowly made its way toward the border planet, its crew ready for a new kind of mission. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were peacekeepers, and for the first time in a long while, Commander Harlan felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe peace wasn't such a strange thing after all. Maybe it was exactly what they needed. The ship drifted into the atmosphere of the planet below, ready to begin its new mission. The crew, once lost in the dark, now had a chance to help the Vanguard hovered in orbit around the border planet. Its massive hull cast a shadow over the dusty surface below, where tensions ran high between rival factions. For years, these factions had fought over resources, each believing they were the rightful rulers of the planet. Now, with the Vanguard's crew on board, the Earth Federation was sending its best peacekeepers to end the bloodshed. Commander Harlan stood at the bridge window, his gaze fixed on the planet below. It looked peaceful from up here, almost serene. But he knew the truth. The situation on the ground was anything but peaceful. He glanced at the crew around him, each of them hardened by years of battle, each of them unsure if they were truly ready for this new mission. "This isn't going to be easy," Harlan said quietly to Daxon, who stood beside him. "No, but it's worth trying," Daxon replied. "The Federation believes in you. They believe in the Vanguard. They believe you're the key to ending this conflict." Harlan turned to face Daxon. "You don't get it, do you? We've spent our whole lives fighting. We know war. We know how to win battles. But peace is different. How do you fight for peace when you've never learned how to live without a fight?" Daxon nodded, understanding the weight of Harlan's words. "It's not about fighting, Commander. It's about understanding. The greatest victory isn't won by force. It's won by making others see that peace is possible." Harlan's brow furrowed as he absorbed the message. It felt foreign, but there was a glimmer of something deep inside him, a flicker of hope that maybe this could work. Lynn, who had been quietly observing from the back of the bridge, spoke up. "The crew is ready, Commander. We've trained for this. We've faced worse. We can do this." Harlan smiled at her. "You make it sound so easy." Lynn shrugged. "We've survived everything thrown at us. This is just the next challenge." The shuttle was ready. It would take Harlan, Daxon, and a small group of officers down to the planet's surface. The factions had agreed to meet in a neutral zone, a large, abandoned city that had once been a thriving hub of trade before the war had torn it apart. Now, it was a place where broken promises and old grudges could be confronted. The shuttle descended, its engines humming as it cut through the thick atmosphere. Below them, the two factions had already gathered, each side warily watching the other, their weapons still in hand, their faces hard and distrustful. As the shuttle touched down, Harlan felt a knot in his stomach. He wasn't used to diplomacy. He was used to strategy and tactics. He was used to battle plans. But this was different. This was a fight for something he wasn't sure he could understand. He stepped off the shuttle, followed by Daxon and Lynn, and approached the leaders of both factions. They were tense, each of them standing apart from the other, guarded. "I am Commander Harlan," he began, his voice steady but carrying the weight of his years in war. "We've come to help you end the fighting, to give you a chance at peace." One of the faction leaders, A tall man with a scar across his face stepped forward. "You don't understand," he said harshly. "This planet has been at war for centuries. We can't just forget everything we'd fought for." Harlan took a deep breath. "I understand war better than anyone here, but I also understand loss. I know what it's like to fight for something that you believe in, and then realize that the cost of that fight is too high. The cost of this war is too high." The leader scoffed. "You talk like a pacifist." "I talk like a survivor," Harlan replied. "I've seen what happens when you win a war but lose everything else. I've seen what happens when you keep fighting, even when there's nothing left to fight for." The second leader, a woman with short, dark hair, stepped forward. "And what do you think you can do? You come from a ship, from a people who've forgotten what war even means. You don't know what it's like to fight for survival." Daxon stepped in, his voice calm but firm. "We've all fought for survival. But now we're here to help you find another way. We're not asking you to forget your history. We're asking you to build a future." The tension was thick. The two factions exchanged glances, their eyes filled with doubt and suspicion. Harlan could feel the weight of their anger, their pain. But he also felt something else. An opening. A small crack in their hardened hearts. "We're not here to take sides," Harlan said. "We're here to help you end the bloodshed. We're here to help you see that you don't have to keep fighting. You can be something more than soldiers." For a long moment, there was only silence. The leaders of the factions exchanged looks, their expressions unreadable. Finally, the scared man spoke again. "And if we don't want peace, what then?" Harlan's eyes locked with his. "Then you'll continue to fight. But remember this, there are always consequences. The war you're fighting may not end in victory. It may end in your complete destruction." The woman spoke next, her voice softer. "What happens if we agree?" "If you agree," Daxon said, "then you'll begin to rebuild. You'll start the long process of healing. But it's not easy. Peace isn't a one-time decision. It's a choice you make every day." Another long silence passed, and then the scared man stepped forward, extending his hand. "We'll try," he said, his voice low but resolute. The woman nodded, and for the first time in years, a glimmer of hope passed between the two leaders. Harlan extended his hand as well, shaking the leaders firmly. "Thank you." The Vanguard's crew watched from above, knowing that this was only the beginning. The peace process would take time. It would take effort. It would take patience. But the Vanguard's crew had learned something on this journey. They had learned that the greatest victories weren't the ones won in battle, but the ones won in moments of understanding, in moments where enemies chose peace instead of war. As the shuttle returned to the Vanguard, Commander Harlan stood once again at the window, staring at the planet below. The warship was no longer a weapon of destruction. It was a symbol of something greater. It was a symbol of hope, of redemption, and of the power to change. For the first time in years, Commander Harlan felt at peace, and he knew that, no matter how long it took, the Vanguard and its crew had found their new mission. They weren't soldiers anymore. They were peacekeepers. And that was a fight worth fighting for.